Excuse me, Mr. DJ.
Hey, check this out. We got a great show coming your way.
From the ECSI Sports Studios, it's the Midday Market Report with Jeff Dawson.
Good afternoon, sports fans from all around the globe. I am your host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors. This is your midday market report for Tuesday. What do we got here? October 11th, 2022. Gonna muscle through our weekly chat with Ron. Apologies on my end. I stepped out of the office and thank God he DM'd me. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Ron. I'm out to lunch today, but definitely don't like missing this opportunity to talk about the NFL, to talk about college, to talk about this week's card. I mean, there's some amazing college games set up, and there's a couple big NFL games. I kind of wanted Ron's take on what transpired also in the NFL this week with the concussion, the quick pull with Teddy Bridgewater, and obviously the roughing the passer Sunday with Tom Brady, and yesterday obviously with Derek Carr. There's a lot of money at stake here, changing hands with these referees. They have a big say in the matter, and it's kind of, it always was these games are rigged or whatever, which is not true, people. They're not rigged. Now, there's some crooked people in the world. Yeah, of course they are, but these games are not rigged. But anyways, without further ado, let's bring him in, the one, the only, Mr. Rob.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm good. Hope you're well as well. I hope you're doing good. Last week, week 5 in the NFL, one of my favorite weeks, one of my high volume weeks, and it was fun. It was exciting, and a couple of misses, a couple of comments, like you said, about the officiating. Yeah, it's tough out there.
And I am not the guy on my timeline on Twitter to start ranting and raving about refs, about umpires. When you go to the window, you place hard-earned money with conviction. You're choosing a side from your data, your thought process, however you come across it. And as soon as one bad call, one bad strike, you see so many people on social media, Twitter especially, oh, it's fixed. They even in the NBA, they use the ref angle, yada, yada, yada. Going back to Sunday with Tom Brady. Now, I lived through 2 decades of this. I'm 45 minutes from Gillette, and I never drank the Kool-Aid. I never bought in Bill We Trust and the chicken and the egg, who means more, Bill or Tom. Yes, he's gotten a lot of calls, starting with the Raiders way back in the snowball playoff game. But when Atlanta comes all the way back with a 3rd down stop to get the ball to potentially not just cover, to win the game outright, Tom jumps up. And if you looked, when he was on the ground, he put his foot straight up like trying to kick the guy out and gets the flag. And then to double down on what happened yesterday, you've been in these lanes a long time, Ron. At any point, do you just start to shake your head, or do you just keep the blinders on and keep moving forward?
Well, it's unfortunately an extra variable that handicappers have to deal with. You're already dealing with, young kids playing football with a ball that's not shaped correctly, that any long pass could be dropped, any field goal could be missed, and now you have to worry about a call that goes a certain way. The particular ref in the Tom Brady game, I won't name him by name, but he's not been on my list for a long time. He's just not a good ref, and it's been proven. There's a place where you could get referee assignments. You could just Google referee assignments. And I have to be honest, I do that before each week to get the referee assignments, because I don't like certain referees. I know they call more than others. This was partially an overreaction to what went on with Tua, and I use overreaction lightly, because the Tua situation, he should never have been let back into the game. And we talked about it, I think, last week. He should never been let to play 3.5 days later in such a brutal sport like football. And now the NFL and the Players Association, they made the adapted rule. It cost Teddy Bridgewater coming back into the game. He was probably healthy, but they're being extra careful on quarterbacks. And both calls were wrong, absolutely wrong. You can't lay a quarterback down any other way. I understand that we need to err on the side of caution, but we're getting into the era of flag football, and it's a little disappointing.
Let me parlay, no pun intended, with the go for two, not go for two, going for it on fourth down, throw the cards out. I mean, we had back-to-back weeks with Harbaugh and the Ravens. One week he goes for it, the next week he doesn't. We saw it again with the Mahomes game. You just throw the card out, the index card. I am in a house on Sunday, and we had a game. We had our game was on the number. I had the 7 and a hook. And I looked as soon as we scored, and I'm like, no, they're not gonna. And they did. They went for 2 for no damn reason. What's your thoughts on what's going on there?
Well, I think each one has to be situation specific. In terms of what personnel is on the field, what team are you playing? Are you able to run the ball or not able to run the ball? How many timeouts does the other team have? What's the weather situation? How much time is left in the game? I don't think there's one shoe that fits all. You have to take it one at a time. The Staley situation was awful. He made a bad mistake in that. You need to pin Jacoby Brissett down inside the 15-yard line with a minute to go. You can't do anything else. In this era of good kickers, it was 50-50 that he could make a 54-yarder. I was okay with the McDaniel situation last night. I thought McDaniel actually called a good game. I thought when you have Mahomes on the other side, when you have a Raider defense that didn't make any stops after the first 15 minutes, you take whatever you can get and you try to make those 2 points and do whatever you can. I'm okay with that situation. Harbaugh blew it both times. The time he should have gone for it, he didn't. The time he did go for it, he shouldn't. He's not understanding down and distance. He's not understanding 3 points to 6 points, tie game to leading by 3. I've had an issue with Harbaugh for years. I just want to point out it's really situation specific, and coaches in general don't understand that.
We've, as you know, and everyone that watches and listens to us knows, in football, the key numbers are 1, 3, 4, 7, 10. Is there such thing as a key number anymore?
Well, 1 and 2 are interesting because you miss more extra points because it's back to the 33-yard line, especially when you get to November, December, you're going to have more weather situations. You had, I think it was 5, and I've never heard this before, 5 backup kickers kicking this week in football because of injuries to kickers. That tells you this must really be a brutal sport if the kickers are going down. I mean, Kansas City just said, let's start going for 2 because we don't even have a kicker on our roster that could, these kicks are going sideways. So that puts 1 and 2 in play automatically. Teams are going for, if the team cuts it down from 14 to 7, I think it was what Atlanta did, if I remember correctly. They scored, they got to 8, they went for 2, they made it 6. So now you're putting all kinds of different numbers in play. So in the issue of buying points, it's never been advantageous to buy points in college because of the scoring variables and so on and so forth. Now it's becoming a situation where you really don't want to buy points in the NFL. Maybe if you had a South Point in Vegas situation where they're only charging $120 to go on and off 3, but everybody else charges you your firstborn child to go on and off 3. So there really is it's only peace of mind if you're buying all or a portion of your play. That's really, there aren't any key numbers anymore because of what we're seeing.
5 weeks into the books. The injuries just keep piling up and piling up. Guys that are supposed to play don't play. T. Higgins. I'm only saying that because a lot of us had him on their fantasy teams. Darren Waller, who is one of the most athletic tight ends in the game, who got paid this year, taps out early. Hammy. These guys are they're just tapping out, and I'm almost like cringing. I call a lot of these guys divas, and I just think in today's game, the lack of preseason, the added game, they wanted to go to 2 preseason games, 18 regular season games, and 2 buys. Well, I'm really starting to think that it would almost be advantageous. Get the Thursday night game out, do 2 Monday night games, add an extra bye week. You want to play through February anyways. Well, guys, you got it. You'll take us right up to almost March Madness or the start of it. But are you feeling that it's spiraling out of control here, Ron?
I've hated for years using injuries as a crutch. Yet, how can you avoid it? These days, 11 NCAA quarterbacks starters may not start this week due to injury. The NFL, it's obviously not just quarterbacks, it's everybody, conditioning issues. I love the concept of 2 buys, and I absolutely endorse getting rid of the Thursday game, which they will never do because of the television market and that standalone and chance to earn more money for the NFL, which is all what they're about. I think you're dead on. 2 buys and 2 Monday night games is the way to go, but it's just not going to happen, and we're going to have to deal with it. And we're going to see, I don't think we could see any worse football than last Thursday with Denver and Indianapolis. I don't think they could have played 2 weeks from Thursday and had 80 days off or whatever and played quality football, but that's a different story. But Thursday games, you run the double risk of injury because it's only 3.5 days and even less for the team that has to travel on Thursday. And it's just not good for the body.
And I'll close with this little rant. I love is December when you get the 2 Saturday games. You get the 4:30 game and the 8:20 game. And even if, they wanted to do something with that. I know you got college football, but in December they're getting ready for their bowl games and whatever. But that too is great, especially that time of year. It's cold, it's winter time. What better knowing that you got 2 NFL games on a Saturday night as well?
Yeah, that's perfect. Just don't make it a Thursday. Keep them into the Saturday, especially Saturday night, because that's close enough to the full 7 days. Saturday night, Sunday, and whatever you want to do with Monday, stagger the 2 Monday games. That's all the body can take.
5 weeks in the books. If you watched the first half of the 9:30 a.m. game, took the wife out to breakfast after the half, you came back and said, "Excuse me? What the?" I mean, the shocker of all shockers in my eyes was the Giants' outright win. I mean, they outscored them 17-0 in the second half. Another lackluster second half performance by Rodgers. They could have been beat the week before against the Patriots. When you sit back where you are right now, as you're getting ready for week 6, and you had 3 or 4 teams, like you're really starting to wonder, do you have a list or you have a couple teams in mind that you're starting to be a little leery of?
Well, I think from a personal standpoint, I'm always evaluating how I've seen the teams and where I've missed. And one of the teams I missed, for example, would be Dallas. One of my plays, after an unbelievably great morning last Sunday, I went 0-2 in the afternoon, and one of my losses was taking the Rams against Dallas. And it's not that I overestimated the Rams. The Rams are who I thought they were. It's just I underestimated Dallas. So that's in the back of my mind. What am I going to do about that? The team that I think Las Vegas and others are overestimating, they keep falling. I'm saying, why are they getting points? Why are they the favorite? Why is Washington being bet week after week? Because they're leaderless at quarterback. They don't have a shutdown defense. Their run game is average. They can't get McLaren the ball. So that's one of the teams I think I don't know why that others are not adjusting to Washington's shortfall as opposed to where I see them. As far as that London game, strange things happen in London. And I think the best thing the Giants did, and obviously the coaching difference is great there with the New York Giants. One of the best thing they did is they took the ball out of Rodgers' hands. They said, I don't care what your run defense is. Green Bay has been historically average or below average against the run. Barkley is running like he was back in his first or second year of the NFL. The injury is behind him now. They just said, we're going to run the ball until you stop it. And if you don't stop it, then Rodgers is going to have fewer reps on the field and he's not going to get in rhythm. I've seen Tom Brady have miserable first 40 minutes of the game, and then he gets in rhythm and he doesn't miss a pass. And the same thing would happen to Aaron Rodgers, but Aaron Rodgers didn't get on the field enough in the second half. And so I credit the Giants with that performance.
2 games in the NFL, and one is you can't get any bigger, and that is Dallas at Philly. And they came right back with that 5.5 number. In Philly, I haven't heard. I'm assuming Dak's not going to play. This kid hasn't lost last year or this year. No need for Dak to rush back. No pun intended there. And then, of course, the game of all games, the Bills go to Kansas City. 2-point favorites there for the Bills. What are you seeing in both those games?
Well, for the Kansas City Buffalo, I think this is the point where Buffalo says, now let's erase those last 13 seconds of last year when we allowed Mahomes to go down the field instead of just mugging a guy, getting a 5-yard holding penalty twice in a row. They could have milked the clock. They could have done a lot of things in the 13 seconds. I've said this all spring and summer long on the shows that I've done with Chris and with Ted. It's Buffalo's fault, not the fact that there were different overtime rules that Buffalo lost the game. You can't allow the other team to come back with 13 seconds left to go 65 yards or whatever. So Buffalo's been pointing to this game for a long time. They're still by far my number 1 power rated team. I understand that KC is tough at home. KC historically is an incredible underdog, but I think Buffalo pulls this game out, not just pulls this game out, but I think Buffalo is the right side, especially offensively in this game. The Philly-Dallas game is really interesting. If Dallas were to make the switch to Dak Prescott, I think the timing would be really weird, and I don't think would be the right thing to do. So if they go with Cooper Rush, one thing I said on the show, I think it was on the Friday show with Chris, is that Cooper Rush does 2 really good things. He generally doesn't take sacks. He did take a little bit against the Rams, but he was careful. And he doesn't turn the ball over. And anytime you have a backup quarterback that has that kind of characteristic where they won't lose you the game, and he has enough weapons to win you the game, I think that's a great combination. I honestly didn't see Dallas playing as good defensively as they have been. That's on me. But it'll be an interesting test against a diversified offense like Phillies. I think this is a fascinating game. I don't have an opinion on the game right now, but I'll do a deeper dive into it.
Is Philly, I'm assuming Philly is your number 2 rated team. Are they closing the gap? Every time I do a show weekly with Dave Sharapin and Brady Tinker, and each week I have highlighted since week 2 that it's going to be Philly and Buffalo. And I've changed the lines every week according to how they played. And going into last week, I said Buffalo is now 3.5 on a neutral field. I think I said the total was like 54.5, 55. You got on a neutral field right now around 3.5 for Buffalo, Philly, or do you got it more?
I guess I'm really high compared to everybody else on Buffalo, but I've got them 5 on a neutral field.
Okay.
5.5 on Philly, 5 on KC. I also have San Francisco. Gee, how many players do they have left? I mean, they keep it's just terrible every year. They were upset, I think, that the Chargers had so many injuries, and San Francisco said, no, we got to catch you in injuries. It's not something that they need to catch. At full strength, San Francisco is my number 2 team. I think they're that good. They're really good defensively. And the way Shanahan schemes the first 15 plays, Jimmy G knows the offense. Deebo Samuel is one of the most innovative weapons you have. When Jeff Mitchell comes back, that's really good. Unfortunately, they lost their left tackle. They have some other things. Maybe George Kittle rounds into form after the bye, but that's a really good team.
I had them the last couple of years, and I thought last year was going to be it too. Before we jump to college, let me backtrack. So you have KC number 2. So you had KC at 5, Philly at 5.5. So championship game this year in Buffalo. Are you gonna? Is that a 7.5 for you, or are you going to keep that at around a 6.5?
Well, the thing of it is, there's a lot of season to be played,
If
so
it
we
was
can't
going to
go
be
there.
played this week, Ron.
Yeah. I've generally been between 1 and 1.5 for home field advantage. Usually in the playoffs, I'll move it up a half. So it's 1.5 to 2 in the playoffs, especially for these teams that get an extra week of rest. It's very important at the end of the year where your starters can take a little bit of break, even though the number 1 seeds haven't always won. Last year, Green Bay was the number 1 seed, but we know they're vulnerable. And Tennessee was my 15th rated team last year at the end of the year. And so the fact that they were number 1 seed and had the extra week off, well, that's nice, but they were still my 15th team. So, they couldn't make up for that. They just lucky that they were in the division they were in and got enough wins to be the number 1 seed. So a lot to depend on there. But, right now it would be pretty much 6.5 if the game was played today in the divisional final.
College last week, no Bryce Young, and A&M had a chance to actually win that game. And even if he caught it, though, that he wouldn't have scored. So shame on you, Jimbo. The two of the things that really opened my eye, obviously, is what Texas did to Oklahoma and the difference that Ewers makes at QB versus second and third string number 1. Number 2, and I got to give some hats off. So impressed back-to-back weeks at UCLA and what Chip Kelly has done with the Bruins there. Thoughts on those 2 games?
I don't know what happened to Oklahoma's defense, but it has been MIA, missing in action. So their program's a mess right now. You go back historically, and if Oklahoma hosts Kansas, they're usually between 30 and 40 point favorites. And now we're looking at about 7. And the only reason we're looking that high is because Kansas quarterback is unlikely to play. Oklahoma's quarterback also might not play. And, those are 2 of the 11 or 12 quarterbacks that may not play. But Oklahoma's a mess maybe for the first time in 20, 30 years where nothing is clicking. UCLA, the offense, Chip Kelly took 4 years to design the offense the way he wanted it, and it's rolling absolutely perfectly. So it'll be interesting to see if defensively what happens, because I still think they're no better than an average team defensively. But this is Chip Kelly's offense, perfectly situated for him. A lot of upperclassmen. These guys got the extra year, like everybody with COVID. They got to be in Chip Kelly's system for 3, 4, now 5 years. The absolute perfect quarterback for the situation, the transfer running back from Michigan. They're going to be tough to beat because even when they play USC later in the year, there's still a question about SC's defense. So it's really the only way they could really lose is if they turn the ball over and the defense gets overmatched against a really clicking offense. But by far, this is UCLA's best team in a long time.
All right. I highlighted a handful of games, and there's some big games here. I'm just going to go down the spreadsheet. I'll throw the game out, the opening number, and you can give some thoughts. Penn State, Michigan opened at 7. 6.5 and over opened around 51, 52s, right around 52.5.
Yeah, my first look is the data. I use data, crossover data after 4 weeks. Again, week 5 is a critical week for me, but now we're in week 7 of college, so that's kind of evened itself out. I think it's a fascinating game. Penn State rested, ready for this game. you're probably going to talk about a couple of other teams in this situation. They're both 5-0. I would lean really close game. I don't know if Penn State could pull it off because their kicker is barely over 50% this year. And in fact, they've used two kickers at times. So in a close game situation, people have heard me say kicking matters, and we see that all the time. These games really come down to that. There's probably going to be a place in the game where Penn State needs a field goal or needs something to go right in terms of field position, and the edge is Michigan right now in that area. That's why I give them the slight edge. But 5-0 teams are interesting to me. What happens after the game? 5-0 teams that lose tend to have letdowns the next week. So from a handicapping standpoint, I'm really excited to see what happens next week. From a watching standpoint, I think this will be a really nice game.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago, we were 1 for 9 with a missed extra point. And then last week, I think we were 1 for 4. I mean, there is no special teams in the ECSI games. I can guarantee you that. Just talk quickly about this one. I know it's more based on injuries, but again, a coach that's really stepped up his game is at Mississippi State. 7-point favorites at Kentucky. We had them on their over on the team total last week, and he gets it done. I don't know if you're if you're a fan. They've been rolling. I'm not telling you that they're Alabama or Georgia already, but they've done some pretty good things so far this year.
I'm fascinated by Leach. I think his system isn't perfect for the SEC, but you can't complain right now because, it's down to a science with him. He knows exactly what he's doing, and he has a good defense too. I think he had kicker tryouts, so he got some people from the stands. He had a lot of walk-ons and stuff like that, and the kicking was pretty good until last week. It wasn't as good last week. The thing that fascinates me, two things. One, you're right, injuries, and the Kentucky quarterback was worth a lot of points, considering the fact that they lost by double digits to South Carolina, and were they home for that game? I don't even remember if they were home for that game.
Kentucky was home. That number closed at like 3.5 or 4, but they get steamrolled.
Yeah. So what's interesting is Kentucky has had really good success against Mike Leach's offense. And this year, I checked this out before as I was getting ready this week. I think Kentucky's pass defense is hovering around 41%, which is pretty much the best in the NCAA. It's amazing, their pass defense. The only way I would look in this game is actually with Kentucky. I think they make this a really interesting defensive stand, and barring crazy turnovers in the game, I think we're looking low scoring.
How the mighty has fallen. LSU, Florida, before the season started, was going to be a must-watch game. Florida 2.5. Brian Kelly, first-year blues.
Slow starters, LSU, but they've been able to come back. They play all 60 minutes. I'm not convinced, based on Florida's stat sheet, that this is the best year for Florida. I love their coach. It'll be interesting to see whether or not he makes progress year after year in the SEC. They've got the run game rolling just the same way he had the run game rolling at UL Lafayette. He's a master at getting the yards per carry, but the defense isn't where it needs to be. These teams hate each other, so there's no love lost. They have a history going back to when one of the home games was canceled and it was brought to either Florida Stadium or LSU Stadium for a second or third year in a row. There was some bad blood. I would personally, I haven't handicapped the game so far, but the only side that I look at in games like that would be an underdog. Strange things have happened.
I'm going to throw you a curveball here. Can the UConn Huskies win 3 games in a row? They're at Ball State.
I took a look at their schedule and I said, "God, they have a shot at a bowl game." Who would have thought that? They have like a 5-7, 6-6. UConn, the spread is about 7, right?
It's gone. It opened high. It's down to 8.5.
Okay, and they're the dog.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of Ball State's coach. He came very close to being on a list that he should never want to be on. And that's my bottom 5 coaches list, because 2 or 3 out of those coaches get fired every year. We've already seen one of them gone. So there were just too many entries. So the Ball State coach, I think, got to 6th or 7th. He couldn't quite get into the list. Now, I don't really have an opinion on it. Can they do it? They seem to have a good formula. I just don't trust Ball State, especially as a favorite.
Clemson 3.5 at Florida State. Clemson, I don't want to put them back with the Deshaun Watson, the Trevor Lawrence's defensive back. I still have issues with the quarterback. I think they're in a tough spot this week. I mean, Clemson, nice win last week. FSU, I don't know. Maybe I'm drinking a little too much of the Kool-Aid. Do you think they're overmatched in this spot?
I think Clemson has the best DL in the nation when they're healthy. They're not fully healthy. Obviously, quarterback play has improved. I love their running back Shipley. Their kicker is outstanding and that's the real difference in this game. That's why Florida State lost last week. They didn't trust their kicker. They made one pass too many and lost the game against North Carolina State. I think they were in field goal position, but because their kicker, even though he was 1 for 1 in that game, had pretty much under 50%, I think it was 1 for 6 outside of 30 yards before that game. They didn't trust him to kick a 43, 44 yarder, so they lost the game. If games ended at halftime, Florida State's to play in this game. Florida State is actually statistically the absolute right side in this game. But something's going on in fourth quarters. They let LSU back in the game. They couldn't close against North Carolina State. I think there was one other situation. I have to decide whether or not I want to pull the trigger on Florida State because I really think they match up well in this game.
So you're just giving me the Pandora's box here. I'm going to take Florida State first half.
You could. I'm not that great a first half player. And I don't do that much. I try to stick to what I think I do well. It makes logical sense to do that, but I won't say it's in my wheelhouse to do that. So, and I certainly would rather have that be something that you say, okay, that sounds really good, rather than that other thing you said you've been having bad kicker luck. Well, Florida State could give you that bad kicker luck if you don't watch out. So.
All right, the two dandies in my eyes. We talked a little about one of the teams, USC at Utah. It's a flat 3, a 64.5, now 65. When Circa came out, the under-over was 60 and a hook, and a buddy of mine reached out to me yesterday and says, give me your best play in college. And I went through the whole board. I was like, wow. I was like, I'm not a totals guy, but I would take the over 60 and a half in this game. Wake up this morning and I see a corrected number of 65s across the board. Absolute must win for Utah versus Lincoln Riley, the undefeated USC Trojans. I told him I think there's a good possibility whoever has the ball last year wins this game.
Okay, so we're unscripted, right?
Unscripted.
Yeah, just the audience should know that I wrote down a paragraph of notes for this game. And the very first thing I said is that I set this game at 64. I couldn't believe the opener, which came out circa, I think, 59 and a half, then went up and so on. I said, that's the wrong line. So I didn't know we were going to talk about totals, but you did it again. We shouldn't talk about firing coaches anymore either, because those guys don't want us to talk about firing coaches. I wanted Utah to be the rush pick and, using my formula in the worst way, because I have categories that are still 55, 60% with large sample sizes. And had Utah had the running data in this game, it was in a 70 to 28 category, over 71%. And Utah as a home dog has been really good. The problem is the number I got with my rushing data came out to 3, and the odds are 3. I can't do anything with it, and it pains me because I think Utah isn't as bad as people see them. What they are is uncharacteristically poor at a 4.7 yards per carry adjusted run defense. And I haven't seen that in the 20-some years I've tracked Utah football. So this is a team that can be run on, and USC certainly has the run-pass balance to do what they need to do running the ball. USC's plus 14 turnover ratio is most likely unsustainable. It was plus 4 against Oregon State in a game that the OSU should have beat them by probably 10 points or more, but didn't. I will say that my alma mater got revenge last week in the last seconds against Stanford with the 56-yard run and pass. So we're clear on one game they should have won and one game they should have lost. But from Utah's standpoint, this isn't their best team right now, but there's still the season in front of them. They could still go to the Rose Bowl, but they have to win this game to get there. So I lean Utah, but I don't have data to support it. Instead, I think that over 59.5, 60 was a gift, kind of.
That was definitely a gift. I thanked Jeffrey Benson for the early Christmas present there. He'll be laughing Saturday afternoon or Saturday evening. Before I let you go, obviously Alabama is at Tennessee. I had Julian Edlow from DraftKings on here today. And I just want to make sure I'm saying the number correctly here. Where are we here? There it is. It's 7 juiced minus 15 to 7.5. Obviously, we don't know Bryce Young. Saban is pretty adamant that he's hoping that he'll play. Here's what I told to Julian. Tennessee and Hooker right now is 14-1 to win the Heisman. And I said, if they were to beat Alabama, he has a clear path. Now, Stroud, you're going to need Ohio State, as he said, to get picked off at least once. Will that happen? Probably not. And so what I said to him is, if you're going to take Tennessee on the money line, if you're going to take Tennessee plus the 7 or 7.5, and you think they got a real shot to win, sprinkle some beer and pizza money on the 14-1 for Hooker in the Heisman Trophy.
Not a bad way to go. Mobile quarterbacks are a little bit tougher for Alabama to defend than traditional quarterbacks. In fact, the way Alabama's defense is playing this year, traditional quarterbacks almost have no chance. Alabama's defense is really excelling. For me, the quarterback situation with Alabama is completely it's the whole game, because I think Tennessee has a real shot if their lead quarterback can't go in this particular game. It makes Tennessee's defense, which has looked pretty good this year, and they'll have a tough task against Gibbs, the running back against Alabama, but they could probably put an extra defender defending both the quarterback run and Gibbs running for Alabama if that's where they go with the backup quarterback. They can't do that if Bryce Young is in there, because then they're going to have to defend the pass equally to the run, and that gives Gibbs breathing room and, of course, a better passer with the lead quarterback. So this game, to me, is totally dependent on who quarterbacks for Alabama. Should be an exciting game because I like Tennessee's quarterback a lot. I think how he performs in this game will go a long way to determining what his potential NFL future is, which he's certainly not thinking about in this game. They're only thinking beat Alabama, which is fine. It's really a very interesting game. The data supports Alabama on the ground, and the data, when it supports Alabama, has been pretty powerful. So it's going to be a sit back and watch game for me. I guess I'm going to have like 2 or 3 TVs going, because this is a good week for watching the games. But it really is going to be fascinating. The landscape of who's in the Final Four could really depend on, Penn State, Michigan, Alabama, Tennessee, to some extent USC, and to some extent what happens with undefeated teams, Oklahoma State and TCU as well. So, and even Clemson, if you want to put them in the mix, because aren't they playing Syracuse, who's undefeated as well? So it's a fascinating week for college football.
Ron, I can't thank you enough for our Tuesday chats here. I ran you a couple minutes over. I apologize. Tell Vegas Chris we said hello. We love our Tuesdays here. I'm going to just throw a soft lob. I know everything here is unscripted. It's just going through the board. One last closing nugget of thoughts to anyone watching and listening.
One last nugget. Let's go back to the NFL. I'm two game. Well, we talked about Buffalo. I want to talk about Atlanta for a second because they got down to a 21-0 hole, and regardless of the refereeing, they played the game as such that they were playing toe to toe or better with Tampa at the end of that game. And in some respects, I think San Francisco will get a tussle out about. Now, maybe even though I have San Francisco rated very high, they're not 100% healthy. And I just like the way Atlanta's playing this year. So I think my last thought would be, I'm seriously considering the fact that Atlanta is going to give San Francisco trouble, because if they don't give San Francisco trouble, then I just have to elevate San Francisco even higher. I think Atlanta's doing good things. I don't think we expected that from them. And I just think they know what their system is right now, and they're playing true to it.
5-0 ATS. They did the same thing in LA. They were getting lambasted, and they come all the way back, correct? Earlier in the year?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really scared them. They had the ball at the end, I think.
And they were going to scare Tampa, too.
That's true. Yeah.
Thanks to everyone watching and listening. You can follow me on EC Sports Invest. You can obviously follow Ron at Ron A Sports. It's always a pleasure. Thank you so much, Ron.
Thanks for having me. See you next week. Enjoy the games.
All right. You too. Have a great weekend. The one and only Ron at A Sports. Ron A Sports. Fascinating 45 minutes every Tuesday with him. Absolutely love his knowledge. He's one of the OGs like me. Just numbers, and we kind of just dig some more. And thanks he DM'd me. I would have probably slept through it, but I didn't. So that was a big call there. Guys, just gotta throw you a curveball here. Baseball momentum. That's the word today. Momentum. Momentum is big in the playoffs. How big? Top of the 8th, Philly 7, Atlanta 3. Atlanta was minus 200 today. Bottom of the 2nd, Seattle 4, Houston and Verlander nothing. Houston closed at minus 220 today. Now, if they both go on to lose these games, you can go back and try to get these teams at even money to win the series. You can't win the series in one game, but you can lose the series in one game. Don't forget, it's the best of 5. So if the Phillies and Seattle both hold on here, they're going back home. And if they hold serve, they don't have to leave. So interesting stuff going on. So again, tomorrow, 1 o'clock, Andrew McGinnis at Wager Talk and at McGinnis Picks. Me and Riley will do a closing bell at 4 o'clock. I'm just going to try to rest the voice for the rest of the night, and hope to see everyone in the morning. You take care.